Thanks. Hello, guys. Um, so yes, I'm doing this video reaction. I really did the video, but I didn't like. So it was too long. So I'm going to make a better one anyway. Um, I want to react to his videos because I know that he's a nice guy and he's very fun to watch and he express very well himself in his videos. Um, he's very good at making YouTube content, okay, but he does lack video game knowledge and his judge he his critiques to the video game are full of mistakes, and he's simply don't does overestimate the video game potential, and he doesn't he's clearly a troll for the peoples that see the from the people that send bad feedbacks, okay. He doesn't like pretty much all the negative feedbacks about Ashes of Creation, and I mean um, let's watch this video and shall we? Shall we? And yeah, Narc try to be a little bit more concerning about the people's issues, because yes, anyway, this is not a good video. He didn't made many mistakes. He said he didn't say much in this video. He did other videos that I think are more important, and I will react to those videos later. So let's watch this one about tanks.
The boomers in real life who need to compensate for something. This role is a core piece of the MMORPG puzzle. Without a tank leading the front lines, all group content basically falls to pieces. You may disagree with me in this regard, and that's okay. That is precisely what this video is about. Discussion. And I implore you, let your thoughts be noted down in the comments below today, as the goal for today's video is feedback. Feedback specifically for Intrepid Tank Archetype. We are actually
So first of all, feedbacks and opinions are two different things, because feedbacks are meant to be things that you get whenever people's experience some content, okay, and simply the content that Ashes of Creation share is not existing, is the zero. They did share some work in progress things in the alpha 1, and yes, it's basically work in progress. So, and everything they did is just very, very basic, and that you can find in any MMO. And yes, we have not much to judge, okay. So you get feedbacks when you have something to give a response, okay, when you have something to work with. So those are simply opinions about how a video game, those are clearly people's idea. Those aren't feedbacks. The people are simply thinking how the video game should be designed, and are simply designing the video game for the Intrepid studio because they are incompetent and because everything they take is not made by them, is simply stolen from other video games, because of course they aren't a video game developer, but they simply are good players, and then they simply take the designs and experience from other. The Intrepid Studio are just gamers that take the experience from other video games. Still it's a bad word. They simply take that idea and use it in their video game, okay? But they don't do much to improve the video game. They don't have many original and new ideas, except for the node system that is the node system and a little bit in the classes, but those are things that already were made in other video games. They already existed, so they put some work on those things, but everything else is simply comes from other video games. So yeah, we need to talk about feedbacks when we talk about feedbacks. Those aren't feedbacks, those are just people's opinion on how to make tanks. So yes.
A live tank discussion in the Discord about this topic as well, and I'd love for you guys to come and join us. But before we get to that, our patrons and I would love for you to grab yourself a Coca-Cola, because it is important that all roles have significance across an MMORPG, and I believe this lack of significance and the heavy amount of pressure is what caused tanks to be so scarce back in the day. So, in today's video, we'll be discussing...
So, first of all, I didn't understood well what he meant by that. He always, he doesn't specify much when he talks. And it's sometimes very hard to understand, also because I believe he don't understand some very well certain things, and that's very normal. No one knows everything. It's very hard to be a genius. Anyway, so yeah, the reason why no one want to play the tank aren't the one that he said. Simply it's a bad video game design that simply makes players not having fun. That's simply a bad kind of design, because if you have video game, if you have 3 rules, and those 3 rules should have the same importance, and a tank, and DPS, and healer or support. Okay, if you need, if each player have the same value. If you give to each player one of those rules, then each of those rules have the same value. Whenever in the game you make one rule less valuable, then the players are going to be not have fun, and I will explain why. So let's continue.
Tank's responsibility in PvP, raids, and solo, with a fair share of everyone's favorite flavor of cope, baseless speculation. Now, with all that bollocks out of the way, let's begin, shall we?
Okay, it doesn't seem very fun. He doesn't seem very happy to begin, but yeah.
So I think we'll start with the most complicated one to reach as wide of an audience as possible, and before you get bored and go back to your 30-second clip videos. Tanks in PvP have always been a bit lackluster. I personally have never really seen a place for a tank within competitive small-scale PvP.
Well, that's right, because PvP is, I mean, whenever you do, the PvP gameplay is focused on, it's on simply doing DPS and killing another enemy, then of course tanks and healers are just, I mean, they simply suffer, okay? And there are many ways that you can fix this problem. So, I mean, this is a much wide and complicated topic. Let's continue.
In that regard, small-scale content, tanks to me are a pure PvE class. However, is this just the result of the theme park environment? In order for theme park content, such as raids and dungeons to feel good, tanks...
So first of all, one class should never ever be made for one kind of content. I mean, a player should be able to choose between different kind of content. So, but if the video game is based around PvE and PvP, each player I mean, each player class, okay, the choice you make at the start of the video game should be able to be equally important in PvP and PvE, of course, because then you simply remove content from players. You simply put a limit on their video game choice. I mean, on their ability to have fun with the content you make. It's like making an entire class, then realizing you can't use that class in PvP or on PvE. It's a waste of the video game design.
Need to be tuned in a specific way so the PvE content doesn't feel trivial. I've played many an MMO where tanks are vastly overpowered and it just waters down the content that I think matters them.
Indeed, tanks are overpowered because whenever you make one class, whenever you give to one class one rule, okay, and you give to that class much more responsibility. So if one class has the responsibility to take to do like 50% of what the team like 50% of the fight, I mean, whenever the tank need to take damage from all the enemies and to prevent allies from getting damaged, then it's like one player need to do half the work of the group. So of course this class is going to be much stronger in I mean, it's going to be usually it's going to be much stronger, okay, because so yeah, this is one problem with this kind of design.
Most in an MMORPG, the PvE. But Ashes of Creation isn't a PvE game.
Also making the tank like if you have one tank, okay, and no other classes can join the group except a tank, okay. So if you need a tank, you can't change it with any other class. This is just going to be very boring, and I mean, at least have a choice between two classes, because making one class being mandatory to play the PvE group content, then it's just going to be I mean it's just going to be very boring, and the strategy of the video game is just going to be not existing. So that's a very bad video game choice, because you need to be able to choose the strategies, okay, and rules and classes are not the same thing. A class should be able, or should always be able, to cover many different rules. So let's continue.
Is focusing heavily on maintaining not only a solid trinity, but also has a whole class dedicated to tanking. It would be rather shit for that class to be useless in small to medium-sized PvP, so it's important for Intrepid to give them a purpose. I think we should split this particular section into two, medium-sized PvP and large-scale PvP, because I think tanks have always had a place in large-scale PvP anyway. How do you make tanks meaningful when there's a battlefield full of hundreds of players? Well, I think aura-based buffs are the solution to this. It's no use giving a class increased defensive capabilities if nobody is targeting them in the first place. It's probably safe to assume tanks aren't going to be dishing out the same kind of damage as the remaining DPS ones, so they make up for this by keeping themselves and their allies alive. I think Intrepid's focus for tanks in large-scale PvP.
Okay, so that's a very dumb idea, because I mean so I understood that Intrepid Studio want to give the tank the ability to make everyone else a tank, and this is, I mean, it's right, you need to balance, but this is just a game-breaking ability. It's just going to ruin the tactics, the player choice, and it's just going to make the video game boring. And I guess what? I have a prediction that this game is going to be very boring, because the mechanics are just dead mechanics. So whenever the tank whenever you have the tank, okay, you have one tank, and you need to prevent, I mean, it's wrong to make each class this static. Each class should be able to do many different things, should be able to defend itself. So making everyone else a tank is just a completely boring idea, because then you don't have variety in a battlefield. If in a battlefield you have a different choice, okay, you can target the weaker, the more fragile enemies, or the tank, or I mean, it depends on the rules. Okay, so if you make everyone more tanky, okay, then you're just going to ruin the DPS, or I mean the assassin class, because it's just going to be a wasted class, because it doesn't it will become useless. So if your video game design lack of tanking classes, okay, of lack of tanks, you should not make everyone a tank, and this is just going to make broken. It's just going to break the video game with broken strategies. And also, if your tank, okay, it's a very tanky enemy, and gives more defense to the allies, and those allies are of course DPS supports, you still want to kill the DPS and the supports. So it just doesn't make any difference. They are still going to ignore the tank and focus on the DPS. So whenever, sure, the tank, you just don't know how to design a proper tank, because a tank is not just a brain dead character that that need that have some armor and works. I mean, and it does nothing. It's not like that. You need proper mechanics to make it relevant in a fight. Making players be afraid, or you need to make players be afraid of the tank, and it should be a valid target. Okay, so also you should not make the tank an unkillable enemy.
Should be to make them primary targets. That's why people play tanks after all. If nobody is wailing on them, then the utility available in their kit just becomes redundant. By giving them an aura-based buff that increases the defenses of their allies by a significant amount will make people reconsider their focus fire. Instead of trying to burn through defensively buffed clerics or mages in the back lines, players will want to take down the tank instead to remove them aura-based defenses. This rewards positional, coordinated, and well-communicated.
Sure, but you need to understand that while trying to kill the tank, you have all the other allies that protect him and do a lot of damage, and so it's not about what is the best class to focus. It's all about strategy and taking all the options can be valid options. It's more like about being the most skilled, okay, and that's it. So
gameplay, as this aura would not be hundreds of yards wide, of course. It would be well visualized and
of course, one thing that can be done is a taunt ability that can be used in PvP, and it should the taunt design should be designed in a different way, so you can use it in PvP and PvE. This requires a little bit of I mean, artificial intelligence. So for example, I mean, you can also keep the taunt for the PvE content, the old taunt, and change the taunt for players. What's the taunt? I mean, you simply target an enemy. If that enemy try to run away or do things that the tank doesn't want to is just going to be punished. So the player have a reason to I mean, the tank should is like a jailer. He takes away some enemies to I mean, yes, I think I need to think a little bit better about the tank. Of course, I can't solve all the problems now, but the tank should not be the. I mean, you can a skilled the tank can take many enemies. Okay, each such thing should only come with skill from the player, but yes, you should be able to the tank should be able to should be able to do some damage and to the enemy. Of course, it's not just a useless piece of rock.
Require players to stay in tight-knit groups around the tanks, so they stage pushes through very medieval rank and file based gameplay. A tight group doesn't really mean much when the tank within that group is protecting them from that AoE damage, right? Or, it'll just end up being metagamed and everything I'm saying is complete bollocks. But let's pull back a little here and think about small to medium-sized group PvP. I envision this to be around protecting and attacking siege pushes whilst the main force breaches the walls. And I think tanks can step into an offensive style of gameplay in a very unique way as well. This would require the specialization and augment system to not actually be dog shit like I predicted.
So indeed, the tank should be more specialized. I mean, if you of course give to the tank a lot of defense, okay, you can of course it's very simple to think that whenever you have a tank, you should this guy is doesn't have the ability to do damage, but that's wrong, because all the classes should be able to do some damage, and and it's not just about one ability that, or I mean, so for example, you have many different threats, okay? You want to be at you need to rely into other place. You can make a tank that is does have a lot of defense, but it's also capable of doing damage. Or you can also choose to be a tank that only focus on being on defense, okay, or reflecting attacks. And but whenever you try to make a more this is the thing, okay? The more you involve strategy and you build a group, the more specialized a class can be. So if you are alone, of course you need to be able to do damage, to be tanky, okay, and to heal yourself. But whenever you have an ally, you can rely on that ally. So of course, if you have the right team, you need to, of course, the tank should rely on the teammates, so on the teammate strategy, okay, and the ability to prevent the enemies from targeting a creature that is different from the tank. So if I focus, I am like a warrior, okay? I have a big shield and some magic protection. So first of all, it's very important that a character cannot be overpowered, okay? So whenever you make a certain class, you need to be focused on every time you get some advantages, you need some drawback. So for example, you are very heavily armored, okay? It's very hard to damage you. This indeed slow you down, so it's very hard to reach other enemies, okay? And to, I don't know, to prevent them from doing attacks and all of this. So you can have, for example, a mage or I don't know, a ranger, okay, that prevent that slow down the enemies, or redirect the attacks to the tank. Okay, so so let's continue, because I need to think a bit more about this.
Well, and by giving us a wide variety of ways to spec, I think it is possible to create both offensive-based and defensive-based tank archetypes. So I propose giving tanks increased damage specifically against siege vehicles. Have their damage multiplier.
Okay, that's right. You need to be able to damage, okay, because so so you need to be able to damage an enemy, because I mean, okay, I'm sorry, I need to focus. I slept a few hours, so um, anyway, okay, so yes, it's good to see a solution, of course, is that the tank have some I mean, you need to give whenever you have a tanky enemy, okay, the tank can indeed go around and do damage without worrying about being killed, okay, and then the I mean, it's right, he doesn't do much damage, but he can indeed with time do a lot of action and damage. So for example, if a character have some abilities, okay, that aren't able to hit very fast enemies, then that character is going to focus on trying to kill the tank. And so so what this does simply makes simply balance the video game, because a mage, okay, that want to kill a tank is just going to focus on him, okay. It is not like the other classes should be like uh, technically they should not be so easy to kill, okay. Each class should have some defensive ability. You need a certain class to have something, okay. So and each ability, okay, defensive ability can counter some damaging ability. For example, if you have some very fast shots, I mean, if you have all very precise shots, you can you can't damage a tank, okay. But you can indeed try to catch a very fast opponent that is harder to catch, because that opponent is probably going to not have much defense, okay. So this I mean, Oh God, so sorry. Um, so also, of course, a class should not be able to do only a certain thing. You can also focus more on defense, or I mean, for example, if your tank, I mean, a tank of course want to face an enemy that can be easily defeated. Okay, for example, if a mage can't damage, okay, the tank, because uh, his abilities are very aren't very powerful, or they can't damage the tank. Of course, the tank wants to get some advantage. Okay, this of course means that such ally should I mean such enemy that the tank want to attack should be able to have something, okay, to escape or to prevent an engage from the tank. So it's all about making strategies, okay, so giving players freedom, okay, to choose how to use their abilities. And this, of course, the more so if you make a tank, okay, be able to do certain things, then it's just going to be a very static kind of design. A player should always be able to switch between abilities and to have multiple choices. Anyway, now I'm taking too much time, so let's continue.
Double, triple, quadrupled out the wazoo to make a team who is trying to protect their siege equipment terrified of enemy tanks. This will force them to focus fire tanks over other DPS pushing into flank, and that is precisely the purpose of a tank anyway, to be the main target. These are just my mild suggestions, and it is of course important to let your thoughts be known whether it is.
So that's wrong, and this is my misconception that indeed old and video game design put in our minds. Okay, no, the main target should not be the tank, and everyone can be a target. Okay, of course the tank is meant to get some advantage in his ability to defend himself, but I mean, it's a little bit harder. I can't explain it now. I will make a scheme, okay, to explain how it should be designed. But making a player, okay, a player should not be meant to be the target of everyone, or otherwise the game it becomes boring and one directional. So I mean, of course, if you make your class a class that is designed to resist to multiple enemies, those enemies, if they are smart enough, I mean, they are not, of course, going to focus your tank. So that's very, very static view, okay, that doesn't allow a dynamic fight and interactions, okay, between players.
bouncing off my ideas specifically, or giving your own suggestions for Stephen to send himself to sleep to. But as mentioned earlier, tanks in PvE are, to me, far more.
迷子なのにゃ
Oh my god. Oh, I like
more
No,
important.
please.
So let's move the
Big
discussion
boobs,
over to something
fat
a little
boobs,
more Care Bear. In group MMORPG content,
So
I think
stupid.
tanks are a requirement to make content meaningful and challenging. Games that do not feature a tank tend to end up not only confusing and non-structured, but it also makes the barrier for entry on this type of content far too high for your average normie to engage in. This was extremely prevalent in Guild Wars 2 back at its launch, and I think ArenaNet's lack of Trinity really damaged the game's ability to grow to where I personally think it deserves to be. Crushing World of Warcraft under its cosmetic boots. So then, how do you make a tank attractive and meaningful to play in a raid environment? Well, I think the answer is simple, really. You quite literally just make it fun. But how do you make it fun? Good question. And allow me to answer this with an anecdote of my adventures as a tank in the Burning Crusade. You see, I started off as a hunter and
the fan. How do you make a class fan? It should be have a lot of choice, okay, between abilities, and you need to make each ability meaningful and valuable. So this just means having a balanced system. So of course, if you make a tank that use weapons, it should not be able to shoot like a mage, okay. But whenever you get a class, okay, that that restrict his whenever you restrict your choice, okay, if you what to do, if you have if you choose, okay, to focus on doing damage or on or resisting to damage, okay, then you need to unlock new abilities that simply cover the your weaknesses. So you still need to be a balanced class, okay. You need to have defensive abilities, damaging abilities, but they just work in a different way. So yes, okay. So for example, a tank doesn't have the same magics, okay, that the mage can have, but this doesn't allow him to use magic on in a different way, okay, on his weapons, in his armor, and he should have, of course, a tank doesn't have the mobility, okay, usually. Indeed, he is very slow, okay, but this doesn't mean, he does have a different style. So it doesn't mean that he can't reach an enemy. He should find new ways to reach that enemy, okay. So it's all about you can't you can get a class if you doesn't if that class have some disabilities. Each class should be able to accomplish and to win against any kind of challenge. So you just need a more elaborated and advanced kind of class design.
Very quickly learned the value of crowd control and pacing in a dungeon environment. As I played with other tanks, I learned the game in the brutal, heroic dungeon environment that was available in the Burning Crusade. But the sad reality dawned on me fairly quickly. Most players are dog shit at World of Warcraft. So I decided to take up the mantle of tank myself. I wanted to broaden my skill set as a degenerate neckbeard with something to prove online, and I enjoyed the journey of tanks thoroughly. Having the responsibility of setting the pace, choosing the marks, and protecting the group single-handedly just hit that sweet spot of satisfaction for me and sent me into a euphoric spasm of pleasure. The way they achieved this was twofold. First of all, the group mobs, rightly named elites in World of Warcraft, were actually what they were supposed to be. Elites. Wow, fancy that. Group mobs that actually require groups? No. Back in the Burning Crusade, it wasn't so easy to just face tank and outplay mobs like it is in retail nowadays. The word elite means absolutely nothing because World of Warcraft tries to appeal to the lowest denominator to retain their sub-numbers, and in doing so, they're actually running the game into the ground. Believe it or not, as human beings playing games, we strive for a challenge, and by appealing to the social nature of MMORPGs, that challenge is easy to present. You know, just make certain mobs not soloable? It's not rocket science, is it? The second way to make tanks appealing is to give them back their role. Their role as a leader, a protector, a shot caller, and the guy who sets the pace. Why tanks have regressed to try and appeal to a wider audience is completely beyond me, because in doing so, you're actually forcing people who do not want to play this role into it. In what reality is it a good idea to force players into playing a role that they don't want to? Just like myself, you need to make players want to step into that leadership role by focusing.
So I don't agree about the leadership being the front line. Usually the leader is the one that is behind, and I mean usually a support is the one that should do the calls, and you need a proper system about I mean we need a different system, okay? And a proper leader is usually the one on the back, or I mean on the center, that can have a proper view of the field and can manage, okay, all the other teammates, okay? So this shows how unbalanced is the older style of design, okay?
On their appeals. A tank's appeal is controlling a battlefield using defensive and offensive utility, not by dishing out a bunch of mindless AoE damage and topping the meters. The appeal of a tank comes from how well you control the battlefield, not from how well you control your name on a damage meter. But I digress. It's all well and good for me to be the authority on what a tank should be, but without giving ways to do this, my arguments are pretty shallow. So let's use the remainder of today's video focusing on the part that really matters, making them. Them fun.
I mean, they decided to put those advertisements. I mean, why those advertisements aren't for gamers. Gamers don't like stupid, brain-dead video games like those. So just stop doing this. Those are a complete waste of your life, and I don't know why. I mean, those advertisements attract peoples that don't want to have fun with the video games. I don't know what kind of people want to play those video games, but just play chess. Because those games aren't fun. I don't know why they attract. They decided to put those, made those videos because they look very, very dumb. Anyway, let's go back to our video. Making leadership fun again. Well, the problem is, what do you mean with leadership? Because yes, leadership isn't fun. And this is indeed a problem, because why it's not fun? Because it simply means that it's very repetitive and doesn't require skill to be a leader. Okay, it's just deciding when to start a fight. So the video game means that it isn't designed to have a leader. Okay. I mean, of course, the leader does have. It's the one that have knowledge about a boss fight. Okay, so and the problem is that whenever you already know how to win against a boss, then it's just going to be boring, because you don't need to interact and communicate with your team. You just need to make orders, and then your team can can manage to follow you, or can fail. Okay, so a leader instead should be someone that interact. I mean, it should be an active role, so that you should be something that you are while in fight. So you need to manage. You need to know how skilled your players, and you need to manage your player. It's like more about knowing your players' strategies and working out new strategies to win. Okay, so that's why it's not fun, because the video game is very static and repetitive.
So I think discussing augments at this stage is rather ridiculous. We have no idea how this system actually functions, and although it is fun to baselessly speculate, today isn't the time to do that. Instead, I want to focus on the tank's core mechanics and how to make their moment-to-moment gameplay actually fun. We'll start with the active blocking first, because I'll admit, I fucking hate active blocks in an MMORPG. I personally think it has no place. It waters down meaningful gear customization and pigeonholes tanks into an...
I don't know what do you mean with watered down customization. It has nothing to do with the gameplay in those kind of game. I think that active blocking is indeed a more advanced and a much better. I mean, it's a modern technology that should be used, and it's much better and more skilled way of playing. I mean, let's continue to hear.
active block playstyle. However, I recognize this is Steven's vision, and although I think he is wrong, I still respect the direction and will try my best to fix this wrong design choice. In games like Black Desert Online, New World and Elder Scrolls Online, aka very action-focused combat styles, a tank's main gameplay loop consists of one thing: holding down block for eternity. Now, for every moment you're not holding block down, you are essentially not being efficient, or to put it in modern meta mentality terms, you're being dog shit at your class. I fear this will happen to Ashes of Creation's gameplay if blocking isn't handled correctly. I don't
Exactly. I mean, you should not say that it's a wrong design choice to make the video game more skill-based. It's just whenever you make video games more skill-based, it just becomes more difficult to balance and to design. So if they indeed they aren't very good at, I mean, they don't have any talent in designing a fun video game system, okay, they are indeed going to do those mistakes, I think. But yes, an active blocking ability should not be unbalanced, should not be overpowered or too weak. So, or yes, too weak. I mean, why the English language use the same word to, I mean, weak, no, not weak. So yeah. So yes, our blocking ability should indeed be should not be overpowered. It's like I mean, it's it's an ability that should give some advantages if properly used, but it's not a skill that doesn't have some drawbacks or weakness. So let's continue.
Block should be a button that you hold down. I think instead it should be a limited resource you expend to quote-unquote parry certain big attacks. Make the blocking window ultra powerful for the few moments that you press it, then curve that defensive bonus down the longer you hold it. This replicates a very parry-style system from games like Valheim or Sekiro, where skilled, knowledgeable, and active gameplay are rewarded. This also emulates my favorite blocking mechanics, the blocking mechanics available in Final Fantasy XIV. Listen, as much as I hate complimenting Final Fantasy XIV, I have to when it comes to this regard, as they have a very well-made and defined mechanic called Tank Busters. These are highly threatening attacks directed towards the tanks specifically, and they have to mitigate that damage with a short duration, medium cooldown defensive ability, and it made tanking in Final Fantasy XIV have weight and meaning to it. A tank could genuinely fuck up, and that's an important thing to give each of the 3 roles in a raid environment. If we're passing the blame on to each other, it creates a toxic environment. However, with clear, distinct mechanics that are directed towards clear, distinct roles, that is no longer the case. This is why I enjoyed the Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King raidings.
I mean, he didn't explain perfectly, but I got some aspects. First of all, they have more tanks. You don't have one tank or 2 tanks that need to manage the entire fight. So this is, I mean, I saw this in the other video, but designing a video game, giving more importance to one class, it's not very balanced, because you whenever you give more, you make one one class. I mean, you make a group, and only one is the tank, and everyone else is a DPS. The one that is the tank need to do like if you have one tank and 10 DPS, the tank need to work for I mean, he does have on himself the job of preventing the enemy, okay, to kill the team. So whenever you give to only one guy such important rule, then this means that he cannot fuck up, okay. One of mistake I mean, it's like he needs to play much and be much much stronger, because he need to do he does have, I mean, he needs to play like he is 10 players, because for example, the DPS players instead don't feel like they are valued, okay. The tank is indeed very valued in a game, in a fight. You need always a very strong tank, and because from that it depends the entire fight. So whenever you are the one that everyone depends on, this is very unbalanced design, because that's simply very wrong, because you force one player to simply win alone, okay. The other players, the other 10 DPS are going to feel like they are useless. They are simply not going, they are not impacting and influencing the game, okay. They will get bored. And how you and so this of course, to fix those problems, you need to make more problems. What are those problems? The fact that you need to design for the tank, you need to design a very simple and easy to use class, but also for the healer, because if you need to manage many things, okay, if you need to manage the entire fight, like also the healer, you need to manage many players. So then you need a very simple kit, okay, that is going to be boring, and so I mean, you need to have a very easy to use, but also very powerful set of abilities. So yes, that's why usually the healers are like unkillable, and also the tank is unkillable, and they feel very strong. And then you need to make other fixes for them in other kind of fights, so in other situations. So yeah, you should have make each class equal, so each class have the same value, okay, in the battlefield. So if you have a very good tank, this tank can indeed do half of the work if he's going to be skilled, okay. The more skilled you are, then the more you should be able to impact the game. But this should not be decided by the video game. It should be decided by the player ability to play the video game. So imagine that you need a raid of peoples to defeat a boss, but you are so skilled and powerful that you can win alone. So a good video game should make skill very important, so that if you are very good at the video game, you can like you can achieve much more. This is what makes a video game very cool to play. So yes, so I was saying that also the DPS classes are of course they are indeed boring, because you simply have a very easy job. Okay, you need to focus on very few mechanics, very few enemies, because there are many that have the same rule as yours, so you are not that special. And of course, this of course means that your class is going to have some other nice advantages. You to fix that problem, of course, the DPS usually have much elaborated and fun skills, okay, to use. It's just harder to use. So for example, you can I mean, the mage wasn't fun in the classic WoW. Of course, it was very boring to play, but yes, everyone want to play DPS and no one want to play tank, simply because DPS class are more fun and you have many more mechanics to work with. Okay, you need to choose between bleeding, between very different kind of damage abilities. So usually people like to play DPS. Okay. So yeah, let's continue to watch the video so I can focus again.
So much because these roles were clearly defined with a heavy focus on class identity. And finally, to end today's discussion, I want to bring up the responsibility of a tank in group environments. Should a tank's role extend out of combat for things like trap mitigation, creating pathways, protecting members from ambient threats? And I think the answer to this is what.
Also, okay, I was talked about the the boss in Final Fantasy, that you can manage to activate certain abilities that make you unkillable, and I don't know how it works, but yes, a tank should be able to use that abilities in a very strategic way. So I mean, when I talk about tanks being easy and to use, and also healers being easy, you just need to press certain buttons. But yes, whenever you make healers and tanks hard to use, okay, then, and you also need to manage a very important, very hard fight. This of course puts a lot of stress on the player, and so yes, and this is a very big problem. So because it's good to because whenever you are a tank, okay, you need to actively you need to have the same complexity of a DPS. You can choose between different kind of defensive styles and defensive abilities. Instead, usually a DPS is the one that need to choose the when it's time to attack, or that has a certain kind of a combo. Okay, I pretty much never play DPS, so I need to find some. I forgot a little bit how to play proper DPS. Anyway, one moment. Okay. Anyway, yes, it's all about being able uh, to choose the right tactics at the right moment. So let's continue.
100% yes. A tank should be the one leading a party through a dungeon or raid, and by giving them utility to create pathways and protect their allies from danger, it helps fulfill that front line fantasy. I think player collision is going to play a major role in Ashes of Creation's group gameplay, which helps lean into that everyone stand behind the tank appeal, and if Intrepid are as serious as I think they are when it comes to their dungeons, I think we're going to have some really interesting positional-based traps waiting for us deep in the caves and catacombs of Vera. But there's a limit, right? Too much responsibility for one role is a fine thread to balance, and I am very aware of this. Back in the Burning Crusade, tanks did one thing. They tanked. But as gameplay evolved and players got better, demanding more diverse utilities and a more overall balanced roster, identity has been lost. I think tanks should have their own specific responsibilities and utility, but it should be limited. The worst thing Intrepid could ever do in Ashes of Creation whilst fleshing out their augment system is to make every single class able to do every single thing. When you do that, you just end up with some dog shit on the bottom of your shoe, like retail.
Well, okay. First of all, retail WoW is not doing. I mean, this is a little bit wrong, because you need each class to be able to achieve to fight, okay? And if you make you need to make each class feel unique, sure, but you also need to be able, each class should be able to face the same problem, okay? So one moment, he said some important things, so I'm going to repeat that last part.
Fulfill that front line fantasy. I think player collision is going to play a major role in Ashes of Creation's group gameplay, which helps lean into that everyone stand behind the tank appeal, and if Intrepid are as serious as I think they are when it comes to their dungeons, I think we're going to have some really interesting positional-based traps waiting for us deep in the caves and catacombs of Vera. But there's a limit, right? Too much responsibility for one role is a fine thread to balance, and I am very aware of this. Back in the Burning Crusade, tanks did one thing. They tanked. But as gameplay evolved and players got better, demanding more diverse utilities and a more overall balanced roster, identity has been lost. I think tanks should have their own specific responsibilities and utility, but it should be limited. The worst thing Intrepid could...
Okay. He's now talking about players I mean, responsibility is indeed um, the problem I was talking about. Okay, you can't just force one player to have more responsibility. Um, I mean, whenever you have many choices, okay, when you have a class that can choose between various abilities, you can, for example, um, um, do some heavy damage, okay, or you can choose many abilities. This, of course, makes the game more fun. The problem uh, on of retail WoW is indeed the opposite. They don't do that. So I don't. He said that retail WoW has this problem, but um, retail WoW simply remove mechanics and abilities. It just remove player choice. So I mean, the problem is not that he gives to each class the ability to face a certain threat. The problem is the fact that um, it's just too simple. It's a very um, it's a very simple system, because you simply I mean, it's there are many problems. Okay, first of all, it's a too easy video game. Say retail WoW. Then it's too it's indeed too easy unless you play some advanced video game, so some advanced part. I mean, unless you play Mythics, Mythic Plus, and so it doesn't have a challenge, so it's unbalanced in that. Then it's very easy to play. You don't need to think about tactics or strategies. Um, then and then when you have the hard okay content, it's not very much skill based. It's like it has a very it doesn't have a good design, because example, um, I don't play World of Warcraft. I mean, I left World of Warcraft a lot of time ago. I'm trying to remember the old days. Okay, so the problem is that there is it's not skill based. It's just very limited. Okay, the impact that each player have on the game is very limited. You have uh, a very precise rule, and you can choose uh, how I mean, each player, when you face strong enemies, each player need to play at the top level, and it simply means that you need to push push all the required buttons um, without failing. Okay, so without making one mistake. So also sometimes it's very hard to understand, to read the video game, because it's a little bit chaotic. You don't see abilities and all those things. So you need to you need to be able to read the video game much better, and to use that and to be I mean it's not all about having some high-level gear, and then you need to press the correct buttons in the correct order, because then this is the problem. If you have a boring system like this, I mean, if you just need to press a button, you aren't going to have a fun experience, because you don't need to actively choose your abilities, and you don't need to um, um, there is no skill involved. Okay, so so this is the main problem. It's not that you have more choice. So it's not like you you have you can fight back an enemy. This is not a problem. For example, if you get stunned, you need some counterplay to that. It's not like one class can do it and another class can't do it, because otherwise you just can't win, you can't play, you can't have fun. So this isn't the right idea. The real problem is that that there is a lack of um, mm, mm, of player creativity. Okay, um, simply the skills are too limited. So you need to be able to counterplay certain situations. So you a very skilled player should be able to carry and to cover certain mistakes. Okay, um, and this whole thing of making numbers bigger, it's just very wrong, um, because you need to be your skill need to be challenged, not your so whenever I say skill, I mean the ability to think about tactics, and to use your intelligence, not your you should not be a machine that need to follow the same pattern every time. Anyway, I now got a little bit tired, so let's end this video, okay?
Ever do in Ashes of Creation whilst fleshing out their augment system is to make every single class able to do every single thing. When you do that, you just end up with some dog shit on the bottom of your shoe like Retail WoW. But as usual...
Okay, of course you making each class be able to, I mean, to jet everything. I mean, yes, every class should be able to have everything, but this doesn't mean making every class equal. There is a very big difference, Narc, okay? You can make every class pretty much different, okay? Because each class have different choices. But then also each class should be able to move and to be creative, okay? Otherwise it's just too static and too boring. So every class should be able to do the same. Yes, it should, but not in the way you think, okay? Not in the way that Retail Way does it, because Retail Way does implement this thing by simply, for example, the mage that Intrepid the studio design can with the press of a button do many things. For example, imagine you can be tanky, do damage, and and also heal or give mana, okay, to allies. This of course means this is jetting too much, not being. You can do everything at the same time, and this is basically wrong, because player freedom is a very, very important thing, okay? But you need to make the video game balanced, because if everyone can do the same at the same time, of course it's just going to feel like you don't have a class anymore. A class means simply that it's not like a class doesn't restrict your action, okay? A class simply means that you actively choose to have a certain playstyle. So this doesn't mean that you can't achieve the same thing that another class do. I mean, a different class indeed have a different style, okay? So, for example, you are an hunter, and then another guy chooses to be a warrior. So the warrior is going to use weapons and armor, okay? The hunter instead choose to have a pet and to focus on the ability, okay, of his pet, and focus more on building strategies around his pet. This indeed doesn't prevent him from, for example, using an armor, okay, or using a sword. For example, the warrior can indeed also have a pet, but this is another thing. I was talking about being able, to do the same things. For example, the hunter, okay, So you have so a warrior, for example, have a certain style of combat. He's like is made to face the front line, and so he's specialized in that. Um, so, for example, you face a certain kind of enemies. Um, so, I started a little bit tired. Sorry. Um, so a tank is. One moment, I need to think about one thing, and I'm okay. Okay, so I was saying that, for example, a tank and a ranger are very different. Okay, so um, for example, a ranger can shoot an arrow that slow an enemy, or a warrior can also do the same. So they can both achieve the same thing. Or, for example, your ranger can use his pet um, to parry, or I mean, can use the pet to defend you. Okay, to defend, and so um, whenever you choose a style, it doesn't mean you can't face the same threat. Okay. Uh, so okay. So yeah. Uh, okay. So Narc, thank you for if you saw this video. Um, so yes, I mean you need to the player to each player should have some basic abilities. Okay, for example, the ability to defend, to protect in himself, and to okay, but for example, to be able to resist stuns. So each player should be able to do everything. The problem is that each class is better at doing certain things. So so it's just not a moment. Okay, hello. So yes, you were saying that a moment. You were saying that um, that I'm sorry if this video is too long, but I don't have the time to cut. Okay, so yes, you were saying that each class should not have the same abilities, and indeed that's true. You can't have a tank, a warrior that can shoot fireballs, and all those things, but every class should be able to manage something. So a warrior can indeed be able to shoot something, or to um, um, I mean, of course, our ranger is going to be better at shooting, but it just means that he has a very precise rule. It doesn't mean that he can't. I mean, it's right that of course if you have a warrior, you are not going to, for example, have I mean, you can. The game should be able to give you a choice. So whenever you have a class, this doesn't mean you can't. Your class is restricted to certain things. You should be able to make the class as you like, but of course this you can't have everything. That's completely right, but you can have you can have something, okay? You can have the ability of being or do certain actions. So for example, if you are facing an enemy that you don't have anything to damage an enemy, but you're facing an enemy that doesn't have a good defense. So so you need something, okay, to do some damage, even if you are a healer, for example. And yes, so everyone should have everything, but in a different levels. So for example, if you get stunned, you should be able to indeed prevent that, but then you should also be able something to um, um also the stun is something very broken in video games, because it's like temporary death or defeat. And so for example, each class should be able a different way to handle such threat. For example, a tank can defend himself from certain kinds of attacks that want to stun you. So he for example, have a martial style, a combat style, okay? Uh, a ranger should be able to jet to jet distance, okay? He should use his companion, his animal, to prevent the enemy from reaching him, okay? So but even if that enemy reaches him, he can try, okay, to defend himself, okay? And then you need to implement a system that with enough skill. For example, if if you're facing an enemy that is a master of the sword, and you have a stick, it's clear that he has an advantage on you, okay? But this doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to try to defeat him. So if you have a bow and you want to take distance, so you can have, for example, abilities that prevent that prevent enemy to, so you can have some abilities that uh, force the enemy to take distance, or I mean, uh, you need to be very fast, and also you need your companion um, to make harder for him to reach you. So and simply it should be a battle of skill between the two classes. Um, you always need something to fight another enemy. So you need to be able to do everything, but of course you have a different style. So you're, for example, you can stun an enemy, but you can do it in different conditions and different situations. So a mage can stun, a druid can stun, a ranger can stun. Okay. Uh, for example, if a very strong sword master won't doesn't underestimate you, and you try to fight him with a knife or a sword, um, and for example do if he does play poorly, okay, thinking that he won, you can surprise him and take him um, and defeat him. So you should design a video game that is not always one directional. You need to design a video game in a way that makes the player be able to use his skill, okay? But you need to design a video game that can make each player unique, but also be able to achieve anything he wants to achieve. Of course, certain things can be much harder, okay? So if you have some advantages, this just means that you need to play you need to be more skilled, and you need to you have some disadvantages, okay, in the fight. So if the enemy does mistakes, even if he is stronger, um, you can win, and everyone should be able to achieve the same things. Your class just makes certain things easier and more powerful, but doesn't mean that you need to always easily win. I mean, you need to always win. This simply makes the video game boring, okay, and yes, this is it. I'm sorry if I took so much time, but I slept very little. So thank you, Narc, and see you later.
Sure, I am just one nerd desperate for a good MMO, and my opinions mean nothing without your pledge to my Patreon. And hey, as we speak, there is a tank discussion going on in the Discord.
Okay, thank you, and where is the... Okay, let's stop this long video. Bye bye.